Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 115. We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldimand Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Be Well Together podcast. It's Sheila Webster here with Noura Saad. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Sheila. How are you?
I am great. I was going to ask you what's on your mind, but today we are actually going to do a travel series. Noura just got back from Italy, so we are going to talk about Italy a little bit. And today she is going to take us to Naples. Was this the first place you went to?
I landed in Rome and then straight from Rome went to Naples. I remember before going, there was this saying that I kept seeing that once you see Naples, then you can die, because it's like one of those places that's really incredible. But yeah, I spent a few days there. Awesome. Why did you decide to do a trip? I have a good friend of mine who travels often.
Okay.
And him knowing my personality, he's like, Noura, you have to go to Naples. Like,
okay.
It's one of those places. I think the food too, because I'm a huge foodie.
Oh, great.
I think that was one of the main reasons to go.
And did you have everything planned already? Did you know where you were going to stay?
Yeah, I planned everything ahead of time. I did Airbnbs. I'm not huge on hostels. I didn't want to be around that many people. I did the Airbnb. I found a really great place that was what I would consider near like our version of Yonge and Dundas.
Oh, great.
Toronto. So
Perfect.
It was close to a lot of things, the subway line, and to a lot of different attractions. I was very lucky.
So tell us what you did.
The first day, I did a walking tour, which took us into the Spanish Quarter, which is a UNESCO heritage site. The Spanish Quarter really reminded me of back home, being in Alexandria, seeing, the laundry being hanging over the balconies and seeing women talking to each other from one balcony to the other, and the fruit and vegetable vendors downstairs and people sitting outside on their chairs, and it brought back a lot of memories. But they are very, very proud of the soccer culture, in Naples is huge.
Okay.
So I got to visit the Maradona mural and the corner they had there that honored him and all the great achievements that he did for Naples. And yeah, they call him the god. They call him Dios, which is, I believe, Italian for God, but yeah, he's held in very high regard there. So getting to see that was
now
very
I know nothing about him or anything about soccer. So do you know anything?
Not really.
No, you just know that he's really important.
He's very important. I believe at the time he's actually from Argentina. He's not Italian.
Okay.
And at the time the Italians weren't doing the best when it came to the soccer world.
Okay.
So he came in and then he was kind of, the person that redeemed them, and it was a huge win for them. So, yeah, they really honor him. So.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Okay, and next?
After that, I got to visit the San Carlo Theater, which is the oldest opera house in the world.
Wow.
I believe they said it was built in 1737. I went in. Initially, I was supposed to go in the next day for a concert, but unfortunately it got canceled. So I was like, I don't care. I just want to go in and tour it.
Right.
And they do tours hourly.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in and I, to be honest, I didn't really pay attention to what she was saying, because I was just so in awe with how beautiful the place was, and just how detailed and intricate all the, I wouldn't call them decorations, but the designs of the opera house. And yeah, it was
like
so
the ceilings
beautiful.
And the walls and the lights and the
art. Yeah, it was just so beautiful.
Yeah, it would have been nice to hear something there. That's too bad that it got canceled.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Okay. And next?
After that, the rest of the day, I just went out and explored. I ended up to the pizzeria that Eat, Pray, Love was shot at, and got myself a Margarita pizza. It was very busy. I think I waited an hour, but I was just...
Really?
Yeah, it was very busy. But I don't think I cared. Just seeing others visiting and getting their pizza and being excited was just to be in the moment for that.
And was it amazing?
It's very thin.
Yeah.
The Neapolitans, their pizza's very thin compared to what we're used to here, or say like a New York or Chicago style pizza. Theirs was a lot thinner, which I can see why people would eat more than just one.
Yes, right? Because it's not as much starch then. Yeah, that sounds just amazing.
Yeah, the cheese and this, oh my goodness, the flavors of everything was so concentrated there compared to what we have here, like their cheese and the basil and the tomatoes. It was amazing. It was delicious.
You almost wonder if it's more natural there, right? They grow it, they make it, right? Whereas here we import it, or it's not as natural. Yeah. So I think that probably has a lot to do with it, but that's amazing. What was the weather like?
It was very warm.
Oh,
it was very
nice.
warm. I went mid-October, and it was like our summer here. It was humid. It was hot, which makes sense because Naples is south. So very Mediterranean weather, very, it was like the beach. Like I think I overpacked thinking it was going to be cold.
Okay.
But it was definitely warm.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. And did you travel by yourself?
I did.
Wow, yeah, that's very brave of you. And did you meet anyone in Naples? Or
I did. I met different people. One of the days I was there, I actually visited Popeii, which was incredible.
Nice.
And
yes.
Yeah, lots of history. And I met 2 women actually from Cambridge.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow. What a small world, eh?
It was. And I'm just like, oh, Toronto. They're like, yeah, well, we're from Cambridge. I'm like, well, I'm from Kitchener. So,
yeah. Because we do the same thing when we're traveling. We just say, oh, we're from Toronto, right? Because nobody knows Kitchener, right? Or Cambridge, or, or close to Toronto. So meeting someone from Cambridge, oh, that's great.
It was great. The one thing I loved about the tour guide specifically, I did an hour tour in Popeii, but the archaeologists there that have studied these sites, when they come to explain it to you, they just talk with so much passion and just, it's as if they're living it because they've studied it. So it adds an extra level of experience to visiting when you know what you're looking at, and they add that commentary. I think that was probably one of my favorite tours.
Oh, that's amazing. Yes, I think the history in just Europe in general, but Italy as well, but it's amazing because here everyone calls us a young country, right? Like when they come visit, it's like, oh, it's lovely, but it's still young, not mature yet, not developed a lot. And it's hard for us to have the history because of our winters. Things get destroyed here. Yep. Whereas over there,
and it's preserved. It's not obviously as it was left, but there were paintings that were painted onto the wall that you could still see in their real form. And just to think that they had all these colors and stuff thousands of years ago, I found that on its own to be incredible.
Unbelievable. And anything else that you did, or?
Naples, I think it's its own city. It's what I loved about it is that it's fearless. Like it's Naples. And I what I got from some of the people I spoke with is that they don't even consider themselves Italians. They consider themselves Neapolitans. Okay. So, for example, Sophia Loren, I didn't know that Sophia Loren was from Naples.
Me neither.
And yeah, she's like, no, I'm Neapolitan, I'm not Italian. So I love that aspect because when you visit it, you understand that they're so about their own place. Because, Rome gets its, it's always Rome and Milan and Venice and all the things. But then now that Naples is being recognized, they are so prideful about that. And there's just so many beautiful churches and the streets and I highly recommend anybody to visit.
And you agree with the saying, once you've been to Naples, you can die?
I'm ready to go.
You're ready to die?
With the pizza.
Yes, and take the pizza with you. I definitely want to do that. At least go and have the pizza because Eat, Pray, Love, traveling, you have so many great experiences, and doing it by yourself, I feel like it forces you to go out, of your comfort zone and meet new people and do different things. And very good. So I'm excited to hear more about your trip.
Thank you.
Next time.
Thanks, Sheila.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of social wellness. We welcome back Mirko Petricevic to chat more about local media, how it can affect wellness, and challenges being faced these days. Welcome back, Mirko.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me back.
Mirko Petricevic is the founder and coordinator of Inkstain Wretches, a grassroots advocacy group working to build a culture of appreciation for quality journalism. Mirko worked at the Waterloo Region Record for 28 years, starting as a photographer, then moving on to work as a reporter and copy editor before deciding to leave the newsroom because of the precarious nature of the news sector a decade ago. Since then, he served as corporate communications director for Martin Luther University College in Waterloo, and most recently as a senior communications strategist for one of the local cities. So Mirko, can we start? Can you just kind of bring us back to where we left off, a kind of an overview of the state of journalism?
Yeah, sure. From our last conversation, I just wanted to point out that local journalism acts as our community watchdog on groups that hold power, whether that's elected officials and staff, police, hospitals, schools, businesses, anybody who holds power in our community. Now, in the last 15 years, the ability for local news to be our watchdog has really taken a nosedive. Sort of since 2008, about 300 news outlets in 200 communities across Canada have closed. And that doesn't include recent creditor protection and restructuring of hundreds of local newspapers, whether they're in Southern Ontario under Metroland, or Black Press out in the Western Canada, or most recently Saltwire, 23 newspapers in Atlantic Canada. But the ones that have survived have been hollowed out. They've drastically fewer reporters to act as our community watchdogs. And largely that's because of a huge drop in advertising, and that advertising has mostly gone to the online huge platforms, Facebook, Meta, and Google.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So the last time we talked, we just heard about a deal where Google was going to make some payments, which I think you said was in line with the Online News Act.
Yeah, correct.
But we were waiting to see what Facebook would do. So do you have any updates on that front?
Yeah, just as a bit of a recap, last June 2023, the federal government enacted an Online News Act. It received royal assent last June, and in December, the regulations took effect. So in a nutshell, what the act does is it compels big platforms, Facebook and Google, to compensate news outlets for news content that's on their platform or in the Google searches. Now, as you mentioned last December, Google had agreed to pay $100 million a year to news outlets. Really, that sounds like a lot of money, but that's chump change for Alphabet. When you look at Alphabet in 2022, that's Google's parent company, they had a revenue of $380 billion.
Okay.
$380 billion.
Pretty small percentage.
Yeah, so that's $100 million is sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot of chump change. And also, that's not a lot compared to how many billions of dollars the news outlets have lost in the last decade. Facebook and Google, they lobbied hard against this regulation, and they're trying to preserve their profits. But whereas Google has come along and they've agreed, because Google's search really depends on news, it needs the news. If you did a search on Google and didn't bring up any news, then you'd probably quickly move to another search engine.
True.
That did bring up news. It wasn't surprising that Google came around, but Facebook has opted out. So instead of paying for news content on its platform, it's blocked all news on its platforms in Canada. Now, that's their right, but I'd argue that's not being a very good citizen.
Just to double check on that, are they blocking only Canadian news or all news?
All news.
Okay.
You can't share, whether it's from the New York Times or the Guardian or whatever, you can't share any news.
And if the money was coming in, so let's say there wasn't just Google or there was more and there's Facebook, does it actually make its way to the newsrooms?
In Australia, they enacted a similar law. It was a little bit different, but by and large what's happened is that $220 million has gone to newspapers, or news outlets, traditional news outlets. And word is that it is making a difference. They are hiring from the Poynter Institute. It's an institute out of the States that covers news and news organizations and the health of them. Anecdotally, they hear that from professors that journalism students aren't going to internships, they're finding jobs.
Okay.
So
Nice.
It has made an actual effort. Unfortunately, Facebook now has indicated earlier this month that they are not going to renew those contracts with
in Australia.
Australia. Yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate. So if we look at it, the view from above, there's less money, then that means less, for example, investigative reporters, the ones who act as the watchdogs.
Yep.
I'm guessing too, and I know this because I've heard it, people are saying to young people who express interest in journalism, you don't want to do that. There's no future there. So less people are becoming journalists. There's less jobs. And now let's turn to a different reason why people are less inclined to do journalism, the harassment and whatnot. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, back in 2021, Ipsos and the Canadian Association of Journalists did a survey, collaborated on a survey called Online Harm in Journalism. And they polled about 1,100 journalists.
So these are Canadian journalists?
Canadian journalists,
okay.
TV hosts, photojournalists, newsroom managers. And in the preceding year to this poll, nearly 800 of those 1,100, so 72% experienced some form of harassment. 715 experienced harassment online. 220 experienced online harassment weekly.
So you're talking about things like maybe like X or Twitter or wherever they show themselves online?
Yeah, or also emails,
okay.
Direct emails even.
Right.
We often say, 20% suffered online harassment weekly. I'd rather put that into numbers.
Okay.
Because those are people, those are individuals.
Mm-hmm.
220 people are experiencing this weekly. 66 online harassment daily or almost daily.
Wow.
143 received death threats. 77 threatened with rape or sexual assault. 99 threats against their families. 99 reported being physically attacked. This is outright intimidation.
I wonder why people think that if it's a journalist, they can say something like that, where presumably they don't feel like they can say that to other people.
I think politicians are suffering as well.
Okay.
Politicians are suffering that. I think people feel freer to do that when they're anonymous. People are freer to do that online at a distance. They're not as inclined to do that face-to-face.
Well, it might touch on something else too, which is in the old days, if you put something, some lambasted somebody in the newspaper and it was false, it could be threatening, there were repercussions, right? Like you could get sued for defamation. You could have people knocking on your door. But in the world of online posting, I don't think there's any repercussion to the Facebooks and the X's of the world if somebody says something terrible on their site.
No, there's a repercussions for that individual if the person who feels like they've been wronged pursues it.
Right. So if you can figure out who said it, you might have a claim against the person who said it. But the actual online site itself, the platform, they just like, hey, not my problem.
Yeah, and because this stems from a law enacted in 1996 in the States. It's the Communications Decency Act, and it's Section 230. I know we're getting into the weeds here a little bit. I just wanted to point out that what's governing this is an American law governing
we just follow it?
We follow it because of the USMCA, the NAFTA, whatever the acronym you want to use. But basically that law was brought in 1996 to shield small platforms and bulletin boards so that it didn't get sued out of existence. It was a law meant to help incubate and get these small platforms started. Well, they're not small platforms anymore.
No, they're huge.
They're huge, yet they're still shielded from any kind of defamation, liability.
Right. Which gives them another advantage over the traditional news media.
Exactly.
All right, well, Mirko, I know you're really interested in this topic and you read a lot about it. From what you've seen, what would the message be that journalists would want to try and communicate to the public about this harassment and what's happening?
Well, if you look at the broader context, what's happening around the world, the Committee for the Protection of Journalists based in New York has a hashtag campaign, journalists are not a target.
Okay.
Right.
Hashtag journalists are not a target.
That's right.
Okay.
And because they track journalists around the world who have been killed, imprisoned, and unfortunately it's quite a lot of them. And often those crimes go on are done with impunity.
Right.
People aren't held to account for whether they are governments harassing, governments murdering journalists,
right?
Imprisoning journalists. There's pretty much impunity for that.
And what about here in Canada?
We chatted a little bit a while ago about this Journalism Film Festival. that I have going on. Inkstand Wretches has on at the Princess Twin on April 28th. And the film that we are going to be screening is called Killer Water. It has to do with the quality of water, the ghastly quality of water that's downstream from the oil sands production. Partly co-filmed by an Indigenous journalist called Brandy Moran.
And is this in Canada?
This is in Canada.
Okay.
She was just in early January, she was arrested by Edmonton police for covering the eviction of an encampment that people experiencing homelessness were living in this encampment. So she was arrested while covering this because she wouldn't get far enough away, even though she wasn't interfering.
Right.
Get far enough away. It took 2 months for the police to drop the charges.
Wow. So
this is not the only incident. In the last number of years, there's been a number of arrests of journalists covering sort of environmental protests. A lot of advocacy groups are just saying that this is a form of intimidation here in Canada.
You started talking about the film festival. So just to get the information out there, we're talking about Kitchener-Waterloo.
Yep.
There's a film festival, and the Princess Theatre is one of the theatres in Kitchener-Waterloo. Is that where most of the shows will be? This year we've changed the format from last year. Last year we ran 4 films, one a month in Kitchener. This year it's going to be one day. Okay.
It's going to be a Sunday afternoon. There'll be a Sunday matinee on April 28th. We're going to screen the film. It's a 50-minute documentary. And after that, we'll have a panel discussion. And 3 of the panelists that are going to be there, one panelist is Brodie Fenlon. He's a CBC News editor-in-chief. We have Sally Lerman, who's chief executive of something called the Trust Project, based in San Francisco. And then another one is Tim Blackmore. He's the third panelist. He's my former professor of mine from Western in London. And they're going to be exploring the question of what can we do to create a culture of appreciation for quality journalism. Because that's what we're doing as Inkstand Wretches.
How can people find information about it?
Journalismfilmfestival.com.
Perfect. So I'll put that in our show notes, that link. Right. Now, this is, I think, the second year, right?
Second year, yes.
And what generally are you hoping to accomplish through it?
Partly it's designed to increase awareness of World Press Freedom Day. The United Nations has an annual observance. It's called World Press Freedom Day. It's May 3rd. So this is happening on the Sunday before May 3rd. And originally, last year when I started the organizing, I just wanted an event that journalists, former journalists, fans of journalism could get together and relax, not think about the dire state of the industry. And so we ran some old classics like All the President's Men and Network.
Right.
And so it was a little more lighthearted than this year's. But this year has to do more with the environment, because the United Nations World Press Freedom Day this year is the theme. Every year has a different theme. The theme is a press for the planet and environmental journalism.
You'll be happy to know that after the last interview, that weekend, I got a subscription to our local news online.
Terrific.
It's the paper, but it's online,
yeah,
so that was good. We are trying to talk about things that we can do, because I truly believe that the press does help as a safeguard, as a watchdog and all that stuff.
Right.
And I'm worried about not having access to the truth, especially with AI and everything else.
Yeah.
So I want investigative reporters out there.
Sure.
Crossing T's and dotting I's and looking at the documents and trying to figure out what's happening. So that's all good.
Right.
What are some other things in addition to the film festival, which is a great idea and it's a way for the public to show support?
Thank you.
What are some other things that people can do?
Well, when we're talking about a little earlier about the online harassment of journalists, I think that journalists aren't beyond criticism. Their work is not beyond criticism. But I think let's be fair in our criticism. It's kind of like that do unto others principle.
Right.
Right. If we're criticized, we don't like being unfairly criticized. So if you're going to criticize news or news outlets, be fair, take a check, be fair about that criticism. Another one, beyond subscribing to a newspaper, if you are looking at a newspaper and you see an advertisement and you're going into a business that advertises in, let's say, the Record, or you hear an advertisement on City News on the radio or see one on TV, tell the owner, tell somebody that, you heard about them, you saw their ad in the paper, or heard about them online. Reinforce that, this is making a difference, right?
Yeah, it's a great idea, and it probably is great information for the business as well, because they want to make sure they deploy their money where it works.
Sure. And if you go to our website, there we have probably a dozen things that you can do. There's a few of them that cost a little bit of money, but about 9 or 10 things that cost absolutely no money. If you go to ink-wretches.org, there's a section there for resources. Go in there and just sort of take a look and see what's there.
Okay. Well, I have a dream that'll never come true, but I'm going to keep talking about it anyway.
Right.
So in my job as a lawyer, people are surprised to find out that as a lawyer in Ontario, you do have to have decorum when you're making submissions in court. You don't get personal against the lawyer on the other side.
Right.
Generally, you keep things professional. And there's been a nice move in the last 10 years for civility in the profession, although people struggle with it.
Sure.
But lots of the greatest lawyers are amazing at civility. And, I just want to make the pitch that, yes, I hear what you're saying. You can criticize journalists and other people, but it sure would be nice if the online conversations would start to lean more towards decorum. And the easiest way to do that is for a lot of people to just talk in that fashion. You can't control what anyone else does.
Right.
But I can try and talk with a little more decorum.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's it starts with us.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, as you know from the last time, we're a show about wellness, and we ask every guest the same question in a context where we all have areas of wellness that are important to us, but not enough time to focus on all of them at any given time. So we do a mini wellness check-in. Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life, Mirko? And if so, can you think of even one thing you could do to foster wellness in that area?
Well, I think the last time I was here, I confessed that in the physical realm,
You did?
Yes, I did. Well, I'm happy to report that my little app on my iPhone is telling me I'm walking 10% more than I did last year.
That's awesome.
So it's a start.
I think walking is probably, like for Sheila and I, it's our go-to activity.
Right.
And even like recently, I've had a couple little injuries, but I've been able to walk. They haven't prevented me from walking. And all the times I started to get in better health, always started by walking. So I think it's a great go-to, and I wish you more luck getting out there more often.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll listen to your podcast while I'm walking.
That's fantastic. And good luck. This is a really important topic, and I don't think enough people are talking about it.
Yeah,
and we're not asking for miracles. We're just asking people to think about the importance of local media, how it can help, and how we can all help it.
Sure. Yeah, great. And hope to see you at the movies.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. Balance has been the theme for me over the past couple weeks, and you might remember from an earlier segment that I had taken a hit in terms of physical wellness and my sleep schedule. But having made it through that insane week, I deliberately have been prioritizing my sleep and trying to get back on track there, and I've had some success. But I'm running into a different issue. It's one that I'm sure some of you have run into before. And that is that sometimes it feels like there aren't enough hours in the day. That, and I wish I could be in more than one place at one time. But, seeing as the body is a burden, I'm just kidding. I'm stuck in one place at a time, so I'm making the most of it when I can. And an apology to John, because John puts together the episodes every week for the Let's Be Well Together podcast. And I know he's probably pulling his hair out because I fell behind on submitting my artist segments. So John, I'm sorry. Thank you for bearing with me. This week, I just want to update you on one of the many irons and fires that I've got going on, and that is one of the newer ones. It's the Shania Twain Tribute Band. We've been trying to come up with a clever name, and being that it's a bunch of musicians, some of the names are pretty funny. We're not running with any of these in seriousness, but some of the ideas that floated up were Take the A Twain, Shania Twain Station, Just Twain Fun, Last Twain Home, Shania Mania. You get an I rhyme in that. Shania Mania, you know. But we've settled on the Shania Twain Tribute Band, so we're going with that. It's pretty plain Jane, pretty plain Twain, if you will. But it's all good. We've had a few rehearsals, and it's been interesting because the rehearsals take place at the drummer's house, which is about an hour from here. And we do them in the mornings just because that's when everybody can do it. So those are early days for me. Wake up, drive for an hour, rehearse for a couple hours, drive back, teach, and then sometimes gig that same night. So you can see how sleep sort of took a back seat when we were really in the forefront of that. Now we've got a bit more routine and some bookings coming up, so it's a little more scheduled, and I've found a little bit more of a stride there instead of just kind of throwing myself at stuff. But that's been good. We got 2 sets going on, or we're working on the second set, and we'll be playing later in March, about a month and a half from today, over at one of the places I often play solo, the Heart and Crown in Barrhaven. We'll be performing for country night, so looking forward to dusting off a few more of these Shania tunes and having some good old-fashioned Just Twain fun. It should be a riot. If you find yourself up here in Barrhaven, March 23rd, we'll be there, so bring your dancing boots and your cowboy hats and come on out for some country music. To be totally honest, I never ever thought I'd be playing with a country band, but it's been really fun so far, and the musicians are great, and we get along well, so it's all good. That's it for me today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you're having a nicely balanced week, and you're not feeling stretched too thin, and we'll check in with you later. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
It's that time of year where you got to get outside and get some yard work done. Sheila was out the other day. She did a job that took some effort, and it reminded us, now we've talked about yard work for Move That Body before, but it's a great time to talk about it again, because spring and fall are the times where you're doing things like digging or cutting and moving, and you can really burn up some energy doing that.
For sure. It's great exercise, gardening, and you forget how great it is because you're pulling and you're squatting and you're using your biceps, you're using your core. So I always get a notice once a week what we're supposed to be putting out for garbage. Is it garbage? Is it recycling? And I got a notice saying that it's waste, that they're taking our yard waste. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go out for an hour. I just stopped what I was doing and was like, I'm going to go out for an hour and get rid of the tall grass. So we have tall grass at the side of the house and we have tall grass at the back of the house. Now the tall grass at the side of the house is only about 6 feet tall. I know that sounds pretty tall, but I can cut it in half and fit it in a bag very easily.
And it's very thin.
Very thin. So it's not too hard. And I like to leave it out during the winter. A lot of people will cut it back in the fall.
Okay.
I like to leave it out because it blows in the wind
Right.
and it just adds a little more texture to the winter environment, especially the tall grass in the back.
Yeah, I liked it. You left it up this year, and quite a few times I looked out and you can still see it, and you see the tufts and they're blowing. It looks really nice against the snow background. Well, when we had snow, that is, very rarely.
Yeah, it does. It looks really great. So I went out and cut back, and I was sweating, and it was cold out. I had a hat and mitts, and I was sweating, cutting back this and bagging it, and then I raked a little bit, and then it reminded me of how great gardening is.
Of course, you forget that in the winter when you're in the house the whole time and you're not out there. I can't help but wonder, too. Like, there's been times, I remember there were times, because I've been struggling to lose weight and keep trying, and I'll keep trying. But there were times last year when I realized on the yard work weekends, it was great. Like, I actually burned off more calories, and in winter, you don't do that. So maybe that's one of the reasons why we put on that extra little layer in winter.
I think it's hard, right? Because you've got to go out in the cold, and obviously you can't garden. So I love gardening, but I do have a really funny gardening story.
Which is?
So I obviously like to do all the gardening and clean all the gardens, but I also put out a wreath on our door every season. So I have one for fall, one for winter, one for spring, and one for summer. But my spring one has all these beautiful flowers, and it actually seems very real. Like, they look like real.
It does look real. It looks
flowers.
like twigs with real flowers on them.
Yeah. Well, the problem is the birds think that it's a great place to put a bird's nest.
Right on our front door.
Right on our front door. And one time I didn't catch it in time. So
isn't that funny? Like we walk, well, I guess we don't often go in the front door. I do, but I'm sure we open the door a few times. There's a bird's nest on our door, but we don't recognize it.
Yeah, but the only reason why you do it now is because you're walking a lot more, right? You used to bike or drive, so you go through the garage. And I bike, so I go through the garage or drive. So we weren't using the front door as much. And the one year, the nest was there, the birds were there, and we heard this kind of banging. I kept opening the door. Going, what's going on? Well, the birds are literally starting a family on our front door and pooping down our door. Right? But you get to a point where you don't want to bother them, right? Because at that, I don't want to get too close or bother them. So I keep having I put that up and I have to like rip down anything that they start building before they build it because I don't want them to do that again.
Don't poop on my front door.
Don't poop on my front door. So I love this wreath, so I'm not going to not put it out just because of that. I'm just going to keep an eye on those guys.
Well, back to the move the body part of it. It's a great time. Just people think about this. So whether you're planting, whether you're moving, whether you're raking, it's the time of year where it's a little more intense of the gardening. It's instead of just kind of in the summer. Another thing I love about this kind of moving that body is it's so rewarding. So later in the year, you see beautiful flowers. And something I showed Sheila this week, which I'd kind of forgotten about that I love, there was just a little Instagram and it was a little cartoon about someone saying how they were looking at a flower with a bee on it and how they love that when they plant flowers and see a bee on the flower, it just makes them feel good. And it makes me feel fantastic. I love bees. We
see bees all the time. I think we have a family of bees because we have such lovely flowers for the bees and we have them all season. So we have
early flowers and we see the bees, then they love the lavender for most of the summer. We have something called Japanese anemone that comes out late, like late September, October, where there's hardly any other flowers. And it's amazing to see the bees around them.
I absolutely love it. Love it.
So get out there and move that body in the garden and in the yard. There's a thought. Popped up while running. It's amazing how much the mind and even emotions have an impact on physical activity and physical output. I got some really good news, some meaningful news, the day before I did my 10K run last week. I wasn't thinking of that when I went out for the run. And initially I was listening to a book. Sometimes the books aren't really suitable for running, if you have to listen too carefully, or some of the older books that are in sections that are kind of long and drawn out. On the downside, that kind of impacts my run in a negative way. I just don't kind of get into it really. So that was happening. So I switched to music and I put on some dance music, upbeat music. That was all great. And next thing you know, I realized that I was getting these kind of uplifting feelings, these uplifting emotions coming into me from this good news. And from there, I almost felt literally like I was almost like floating or something. I felt lighter. The running felt easier. And I wasn't thinking of it, but I realized later that this having happened about 5 or 6 times on my run, I actually did the run about 5 minutes faster than I normally do. And I just thought, wow, it's incredible how that felt so good. It felt so easy. And it was mostly, I think, because of having some good news. And my mind and my emotions had this great impact on my run. It's me.
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
When we were talking about your upcoming birthday, we said that we would talk about the cost of things these days and touch on budgeting. So here's our chance to talk about that. And I think you wanted to talk about it in the context of the way we make decisions about what to do because things have changed so much in cost. So tell me a little bit about what you're thinking.
Okay, well, I was thinking about birthdays and we were talking about going out or not going out. And I find that right now, you and I are like, oh, why don't we walk down? There's a few restaurants that we could walk to and we can kind of put destination exercise into our routine and then go have a drink. But the problem I have is it's expensive. We end up going to a restaurant. Even if you sit and have a drink and an appetizer, you're dropping $50. And the other issue I have is the food's not even as good as I can get at home. And the alcohol is definitely not as good as I can get at home.
Because I'm a bartender.
John's a bartender, but also you...
I was a bartender.
Oh, yeah.
I am a bartender.
John is yeah.
Yeah, I consider myself a bartender.
So he makes amazing drinks and we make great food. But also we buy wine that we like. We find wine. So sometimes I go to a restaurant and I'm looking at their wine choices and I'm like, I don't even like any of these, right? I can have really good wine at home or really good drinks at home.
Yeah, because we're not that knowledgeable about wine, but we have found some, and especially relatively affordable, that we like. That's a hard thing to find.
Yeah. So basically what I wanted to talk about is how economic wellness, or, you have to think about your finances, but you also need to think about your social.
Exactly. And,
right?
And,
it is social to go out. So I don't want to say, don't ever go out and eat or go for a drink or do these social things, because it's fun, but
we're kind of stuck because we actually did a flip side a long time ago where we decided when we decide to go to eat, we have to not think about the price.
Yeah.
We just have to go. And I feel bad because both you and I, we met in a restaurant, working in a restaurant. We both worked in restaurants a long time. We both know lots of people who work in restaurants, and we like restaurants. And I worry that people are going out less because of the same things that you and I are talking about. So that's kind of a drag. I don't have an answer for that, but I wish it wasn't that way. But for sure, I think you do need to, let's say, bite the bullet sometimes. So to me, budgeting is deciding how to allocate your funds.
yes.
And also when you're thinking of like wellness check-ins and whatnot, you also have to decide how to allocate funds and time to try and get some balance.
Yes. And that's exactly what I'm saying.
And that's why, like, part of me thinks maybe we should go out for your birthday. We haven't decided yet. Because you want to experience things and be in social settings and, be part of the world and not just always in your house.
Yeah. And that's the thing about balance. Sometimes it's a struggle. You have to figure these things out. Financially, it's really hard right now because, your mortgage is 15% more, whatever, because of the interest rates that have gone up. And then food is so much more expensive. Gas, so much more. Like, everything's just so expensive. So then when you're looking at your budget, you're trying to figure this out. But I think you can fiddle with things to make it work.
Yeah, but I guess the point is that mortgage rates are so high right now. Food is so expensive. Everything's so expensive. It's really having a big impact on our balancing exercises. And, we have a condo that we rent out in Collingwood. Ideally, we get to spend time there during the year. So ideally, we could rent it out, let's say, 8 months during the year. But because of the current situation, we're having to think about whether to rent it out all the time or more than 8 months. And now we can't use it. And that's affecting the balance.
Your balance.
I hadn't really thought of it too much until this big kind of financial crunch has been hitting. But boy, the economic side of things can sure throw wrenches into your kind of wellness balancing routines.
Yeah. And all I wanted to say is that eating at home, making your own food is incredibly healthy. You know what's in everything. Like, you think that when you go to a restaurant, you're having mashed potatoes, and those are healthy until you see them, make it with the 35% cream and a pound of butter and everything else they put in it.
Sheila and I like Gordon Ramsay shows.
Yeah.
Everything from Hell's Kitchen to whatever. I can't remember. We just saw in passing one time there was a show and someone had made mashed potatoes, I think. And I think he said something like, what the heck? That was supposed to be 1/3 butter. And Sheila and I just look at each other like, what?
Yeah. So the main ingredient isn't potato?
I'm like, what? So I do like the fact that when we eat at home, we know exactly what we're eating.
Exactly. And you can pick and choose how you want it or what you want to eat. But it is cheaper. Financially, if you're thinking about budgeting, it is cheaper, right? So
having said that, though, I think one of the things that's coming out of this chat is we can't rein in so far because of the economic side that we start to lose some of the other stuff that we need to bring back into the mix.
Yes.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. It's Elise here with John and Sheila.
Hello.
Hello.
I had a relatively short week because it was Easter weekend. I had an extra couple days of my weekend, which was great. And I had a pretty relaxing week, which was also really great. I did get to tune into a dance competition for some of the students that I choreographed for. And it's really amazing how I can tune in virtually to dance competitions. I really love that.
That is really awesome.
Yeah, when I can't make it to wherever they are, I can just tune in live on my laptop and I get to see how they did because I get to see the adjudications as well. So I really enjoyed that experience, and the dancers did a fantastic job, and they really brought the choreography to life.
That's great, Elise.
Amazing.
How about you, Sheila?
Well, I am really tired. I've had a busy week. I didn't have Easter Monday off, so I had to work every single day this week, and some of the days were 10-hour days, so it was really long work week for me. And also, I started doing some gardening, and I forgot how hard work gardening is. It's a workout in itself. Plus, I got some scratches and stuff because I'm doing the grass, the tall grass, and it's scratching me and gets dirty. So I've been working hard as well as doing some catering. So I'm just trying to get all my work in before I go away, because pretty soon I'm going to be going to Italy. So I'm excited about that. What's new with you, John?
Well, I was going to talk about how I'm like a slave driver and you have to work really hard because I tell you have to.
Yes, exactly.
Then
That's
you mentioned
true.
that you're going to Italy by yourself. So that would probably work against my theory of being so tough.
That's right. I'm going to Italy without John.
Yes. Okay, well, my back is finally feeling 100%. I don't have any pain at all. So that's really exciting. I'm going to get back into my normal workout routine, and I'm hoping that that brings my spirits up because I've been a little down in the dumps by not being able to do some of my working out. We just booked a place. Sheila's going to Italy by herself. My work is having a work conference in Prague in June, and Sheila's going to join me for a little bit of time before that. So we just booked an Airbnb that looks amazing. So that's exciting. Mm-hmm. I'm almost done making my Spotify playlists for dance, including one for foxtrot, waltz, tango, even a little bit of mamba, although I'm not really loving the mamba. And it was a really busy work week. So lots going on. I was actually really tired. Thursday and Friday, I was exhausted by the end of each day. There was just so much going on at work, and a lot of the stuff was high pressure. So I really needed some downtime, and I got it, and I'm feeling better. I worked out yesterday and today, and I think that helped.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
So that's it for me. Anybody else?
Actually, I'm really interested to see what will happen on Monday. We're taping this on Sunday. On Monday is the solar eclipse.
Right. So will people see it and all that?
Yeah. Will people see it? Are people going away? Like what the traffic will be like? I actually have to work, so I'll see what happens for me. What about you, Elise?
I have to work, but it's a PD day for us. So that means we won't have any students at the school. It'll just be professional development. So it'll just be staff.
Right. So we'll see what happens. It'll be pretty exciting if we get to see it, and if it's not too cloudy. Right now, that is what the forecast is saying, that it's going to be a little cloudy, so we might not even see it. But next week, we'll all give our experiences.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for listening. By the time you hear this show, you'll know what happened because the show comes out the Tuesday after. And thanks for joining us, and hopefully you'll join us again next week.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.